coming back from our trip to find so much of the garden hidden amongst the heavy growth of what is now knee-high grass and a plethora of newly sprouted and yet seemingly well-established weeds was a shock. But the name of the game here at Nights and Weekends Homestead is do what you can, when you can, a little bit at a time. An hour here between getting the kids to school in the morning and starting work, an hour there at lunch, and a few hours after work until the sunlight fades and the bugs come out to feast. Little by little, one step at a time, try to stay ahead, and if you fall behind, try to catch up. This is volunteer kale, meaning I did not intentionally plant it here, at least not this year. 2 years ago, I had several varieties of kale in 2 rows here in this plot. The plants overwintered beneath a low tunnel, and in the spring, I got a few leaves off the plants that looked like they'd survived. I intended to rip out the plants and compost the stalks, but spring being spring, I had a lot of other projects, and that one fell to the bottom of the pile. At some point, the kale started to flower, and I thought, hey, let's see what happens. I figured nothing would happen because I wouldn't have time to harvest and fully dry the seeds. I was right about that, but wrong about nothing happening. Nature doesn't really need us, after all. The kale did go to seed, and, that winter, dropped what I can only guess must have been millions of seeds on the ground throughout this plot. And here's the result. This is the second year this section has self-seeded to kale. I've got Beatty's Camden and Red Russian for sure, and possibly winter boar, though it's too early to tell, at least to my eyes. The hard part for someone like me is forcing myself to get rid of any of this kale, which, since I don't want it here, meets the definition of a weed. I want to save some, but how much do I really need to transplant into a hoop house this fall? There are probably 500 or more plants here. At most, I would need 30. Yet, when you tend toward hoarding, getting rid of the other 470 can be challenging. I'm so excited because this tree that I grafted years and years ago, and I don't even remember what variety it is because at the time I had a very poor system for labeling, is finally fruiting. It survived voles, it survived poor management, and I just walked by and there are so many little tiny apples with the blossoms still on. Check this out. Holy cow, look at them all. This is so exciting. I have absolutely no illusions that I'm going to get any fruit off this. I haven't seen more than maybe 10 bees this year so far. It's been so cold and so wet. So the odds of these being pollinated, very slight. But I don't care. I'm just excited to see that the tree is thriving, and very excited by that. There's a couple on that tree over there. I also need to go check the pear trees. I saw a few blossoms before we left. Oh, this is so exciting. Here, might as well see how the old hops are doing. So many weeds out here that they're climbing the weeds instead of the trellis that I made. This one's not climbing anything. Oh, yes it is. Awfully hard to do this with one hand. Stay. Well, I've done 2 rows. I'm all set to do a 3rd row. It's getting dark. Just put the kids to bed. It's a little windy out, getting chilly, so I'm gonna call that good for tonight. Tomorrow I'll come out and do that row, and then I can move all the stakes over to the other side of the hoop house and do these 2 rows at my leisure, I guess. Pretty pleased with how this looks right now, but with mulch, the thing is, it is not a permanent solution. There are maybe weeds that come up through as this settles. The leaves are nice and fluffy in here, and they're likely to stay that way longer inside the hoop house because there'll be less wind in here moving them around. And with shredded leaves, they wouldn't move that much anyway, but the big thing is there won't be rain on top of the leaves weighing them down. So they're likely to stay fluffed up a little bit longer and maybe more permanently to some degree than they will be when I mulch outside with shredded leaves. But even still, they're still fighting against gravity, and eventually they will settle in and make a nice little tight carpet around the plants. The hope is that that happens before some of the weeds that had either just germinated or were just about to germinate are strong enough to push their way up through. It's a great start. It looks really awesome, these 2 rows. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do about the walking paths. I may cultivate those a little bit and then see if I can get the lawn mowed to get some grass mulch to put in the pathways. We'll see. I might just have to cultivate a few times because I don't have any of that material ready right now. And the lawn got really long while we were gone. So I might just have to mow it without the bagger because I think it's too long, and I don't know that I'd be able to collect it. I'd be stopping every 10 feet just to empty the bagger. So I might just have to cultivate a little bit while I get the lawn back under control to the point where I can use the bagger. Even though I've done this for years, it's still hard to believe that in a couple months, while these plants will be up to the ceiling and I'll have to debate whether or not to lower them, and I won't even be able to move through here. It's a good start. Cucumbers already need to be trellised. When the hoop house was over the natural heat mat, I could just set the external transmitter from the weather station on a bale of hay and prop it against one of the hoops from the low tunnel. Now, that's not an option, but I still want to be able to monitor conditions inside the hoop house. Neither can I just put the transmitter on the ground. In another month, I would never find it, assuming of course that it lasted that long without me stepping on it. So, it's time to visit the workshop and engineer another solution using scraps of material I just have here and there.